Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the work of Charles Haanel. This is the Master Key System, Part 4. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It's not the format for everybody, but some people seem to find enjoyment from it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there are several playlists that will be linked in the corner above, the box below, along with the original source material so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I stand where I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of the Master Key System, Part 4. Part 4. This part tells you what it is which controls that which you call yourself. You are not your body. The body is simply the physical instrument which the ego uses to carry out its purpose. You are not your mind. This is simply another instrument which the ego uses to think, reason, and plan. When you say, I go, you tell the body where to go. When you say, I think, you tell the mind what to think. When you come into a realization of the true nature of the I, you will enjoy a sense of power which nothing else can give, because you will come to know what you are, who you are, what you want, and how to get it. And we're already going to stop because I am in disagreement. There are three parts of you. It's the Trinity. It is the body, the temple of God, which you pilot through 5D space. There is the soul, which is the mind. It is the part that is the I. That is the same thing. The mind and the I are the same thing. It is the soul. It is the individualized piece of divinity which you use to pilot around this vessel. And then there is the Holy Spirit, which is the all-encompassing everything that is. It is the part that allows the decisions that you make for the temple to happen. So when you say, I want to wiggle my fingers, you don't wiggle your fingers. The Holy Spirit does. You made the decision for it to happen. The temple allows it to happen, but it is the Spirit that actually makes it happen. So when you make the decision, it is you, the mind, right? The mind and the soul are the exact same thing. It is you that is making the decision for the body, but it is the Spirit that is allowing it to happen. So I disagree straight off the top. We're going to continue the exploration because it's probably still useful, but that is a severe distinction. Introduction, Part 4. This part will show you why you think or do or feel. Why what you think or do or feel is an indication of what you are. Missing that one word can make all the difference. Thought is energy, and energy is power. And it is because all religions, sciences, and philosophies with which the world has heretofore been familiar have been based upon the manifestation of this energy instead of the energy itself, that the world has been limited to effects, while causes have been ignored or misunderstood. That is in large part true. Thought is the deciding factor for the energy to work. So without the thought, there is no direction for the energy, so there can be no result from the energy. So in part, that is true. But all religions, sciences, and philosophies have been based upon the manifestation of the energy instead of the energy itself. And so they have been dealing with the after instead of the now. So it has been limited in its effects. That is evident because if not, the churches would be a lot more powerful than they are. And it has been ignored or misunderstood. So, yeah. For this reason, we have God and the devil in religion, positive and negative in science, and good and bad in philosophy. That is a good way of looking at it. The Master Key reverses the process. It is interested only in cause. And the letters received from readers tell a marvelous story. They indicate conclusively that adepts are finding the cause whereby they may secure for themselves health, harmony, abundance, and whatever else may be necessary for their welfare and happiness. Life is expressive, and it is our business to express ourselves harmoniously and constructively. Sorrow, misery, unhappiness, disease, and poverty are not necessities, and we are constantly eliminating them. And again, I take extreme exception here. Part of the life is the lessons. As a matter of fact, that is the entire goal of life in my estimation. We are partly eternal, right? The soul, the part that navigates the body in the 5D space, it is eternal. It came from somewheres and it will return somewheres. I believe that it came from Source, that God sectioned out a tiny little piece of Him to make you. And He gave you this temple for you to walk around and to do and to achieve. He told you, go forth, subdue the earth, be stewards thereof, and shed no blood of man. That was the first commandment really given. And you can achieve that, right? And part of that is toil. Subduing the earth does not happen just by thinking about it. It does not happen just by wanting it to. You have to go out and you have to labor. You have to till the soil. You have to plant the seeds. You have to weed the gardens. You have to harvest the fruit. That is part of the toil. Misery, unhappiness, sorrow, disease, poverty, those are also part of the toil. I believe that the individualized piece of God that is you, that pilots and navigates this temple, I believe that it is here to learn lessons. That is part of my theory. I believe that we agreed to teach each other lessons, and that is part of my theory as well. And I believe that part of that is that sometimes you're not going to be happy with the results. Sometimes there will be sorrow attached. Sometimes there will be misery attached. Unhappiness will come. Disease is a part of life. Poverty shouldn't be, but is a part of life. And so those things are just as necessary as the happiness. Now, your reaction to those things makes all the difference in the world. Things that cause unhappiness doesn't mean that you have to stay in a state of unhappiness. Things that bring you sorrow don't mean that you have to live in a state of sorrow. I use this as an example because it is an especially poignant one. If you were to lose a child, that is a horrible thing. But your body, your soul, experiences grief. God can't experience grief. Whenever you die, you return immediately to Him. And so there is no loss for Him. But He can feel that through you. Your sorrow over losing your child, it's a horrible thing. You are meant to feel that sorrow. You are meant to cry and scream and rage and ask questions. All of that is part of the process. But it is not to become the determining factor in your life. I know from my own life several family members who have lost, and that became their life. For every day, for the rest of their life, and some of them are still alive, but some of them aren't, that was a deciding factor for them. My son died, and so I have to be miserable for the rest of my life, and that is missing the lesson. They're probably going to have to repeat, right? And by repeat, I mean another voluntary incarnation to learn the lesson of sorrow and grief. Because they did not learn that, yes, it's sad, but it's part of life, and you're supposed to grieve and move on. Not to forget the person, of course not. But it doesn't become the overriding, deciding factor in your life. That is an important thing. And if you try to take away the grief from your experience, you are depriving yourself of a lesson, and you will have to repeat it. You should feel all of your emotions, not necessarily in a debilitating way, and not even necessarily in an immediate way. Sometimes it is not appropriate to cry, but when you're at home alone, it is perfectly fine to cry. When you are with somebody comforting and who can give you the comfort that you need, it is okay to cry. It is okay to express the sorrow, because that is an intrinsic part of the human experience. Attempting to remove that from you is attempting to dehumanize yourself. That is not the way to go. I don't say many things emphatically. I don't stand hard on this is the way. This is the way. You are meant to feel your emotions, not to have them override you, but you are meant to feel them. And anything that is attempting to separate you from those emotions is automatically, intrinsically the wrong path. Now, does that mean that there can't be value found in these lessons? No. It means that his understanding of them was not quite right. We've already seen a couple of examples along the way where that is. We are further along in our progress. There are other things to learn. I am sure that what I found is not the end, that there will be more information coming, and that other people will be able to explain things in different ways than I do, and that we can all get to the same goals through different paths. One of my big problems with religion is they think everybody has to take the same path. One of my problems with education is they think everybody should take the same path. And that's just simply not true. That is discounting the human experience, and we are here entirely for the human experience. Now, constantly eliminating them can mean processing, understanding, integrating, and releasing, right? That can be that. That's the process by which you should do it. Understand, yes, this sucks. It hurts. Cry about it. Discuss it. And then let it go. That is eliminating them. So, partially correct in that interpretation. But I don't think that's what he meant. But this process of eliminating consists in rising above and beyond limitation of any kind. See, that is not, you're going to be limited regardless. Don't get it twisted, right? I have affected healing in my life through the power of God, right? I have affected healing in my life. That does not mean that I will not get sick. It does not mean that that sickness even will not overtake me. It does not mean that I cannot get in a car wreck. It does not mean that I cannot be stricken by poverty. It does not mean that I cannot feel loss or grief. Just because I am able, through the spiritual means, to overcome one limitation does not mean that another limitation will not get me. There are limitations. There are bottlenecks that are absolutely intrinsic to your specific experience. And I don't know what those are. You don't know what those are until they show up. I know where mine were. They're in my origin story. There's bound to be more of them. I am sure there will be more of them. But regardless, you are not meant to succumb to your limitations or completely eliminate limitations. He who has strengthened and purified his thought need not concern himself about microbes, and he who has come into an understanding of the law of abundance will go at once to the source of supply. It is thus that fate, fortune, and destiny will be controlled as readily as a captain controls his ship or an engineer his train. And this is in part true, right? The mental alchemy will allow you to overcome grief and sorrow and all of those things, and you will be able to direct your ship. It is important to note the things that I just pointed out, though. You are not meant to not have experiences. And no matter how shitty they may be at some points, you are meant to feel them. It is part of the process. All right. Part 4. The I of you is not the physical body. That is true. That is simply an instrument which the I uses to carry out its purposes. The I cannot be the mind, for the mind is simply another instrument which the I uses with which to think, reason, and plan. And see, I wholeheartedly and emphatically disagree with that. I could be wrong. Don't get it twisted. I am perfectly fine with being corrected. But God himself has to correct me on that one. No mortal man can do it. It is through the revelation of things by which I have experienced that I stand so firmly on that. But the Trinity is as real as breathing. And the body, you get to navigate that in 5D space. But the part that is making the decisions, that is the you. And so the I. And so the mind and the I are not separate. Yes, the mind, the brain is part of the body, but the electrical impulses contained within the mind and facilitated by the mind are not. They are the part which separates you from the animal kingdom. It is the part that allows you to make the decisions. And so this I just disagree with. The I must be something which controls and directs both the body and the mind, something which determines what they shall do and how they shall act. When you come into a realization of the true nature of this I, you will enjoy a sense of power which you have never before known. Your personality is made up of countless individual characteristics, peculiarities, habits, and traits of character. These are the result of your former method of thinking, but they have nothing to do with the real I. That's untrue. When you say, I think, the I tells the mind what it shall think. When you say, I go, the I tells the physical body where it shall go. The real nature of this I is spiritual, and the source of the real power which comes to men and women when they come into a realization of their true nature. The greatest and most marvelous power which this I has been given is the power to think, but few people know how to think constructively or correctly. Consequently, they achieve only indifferent results. Most people allow their thoughts to dwell on selfish purposes, the inevitable result of an infantile mind. And when a mind becomes mature, it understands that the germ of defeat is in every selfish thought. And this is mostly true. The greatest and most marvelous power which the I has been given is the power to decide, not to think. It is the ability to say, I wish to move this meat suit right there. And the Holy Spirit allows that to happen. You make the decision on what the body is to do, and the Holy Spirit allows it to happen. Most people, however, cannot focus their mind. That part is true. Some people have been able to do this and teach themselves to focus their mind separate from spirituality. You see that a lot in academia. Even though academia has a lot lacking with it, focusing the mind is not necessarily one of those things. Most people don't know how to think constructively or correctly. Again, true. And so they achieve indifferent results. Most people take the information in which they are given and run with it. Most people do not investigate further. Most people do not spend the time to understand the underlying principles behind even the simplest of things in which they decide. Even like down to cultural appetites. Some people have no problems eating horse, for example, or various other pets. And some people do. That is a part of how you were brought up. But if you don't think about the underlying principles behind it, you won't understand that, right? There is no moral difference between eating a cow and a horse. There's not. They are both animals, both of them pretty close. Well, actually, the cow is of the lower and the horse is of the upper of the two realms, right? The third and the fourth dimension. And so there is a little bit of difference there. They are more cognizant. We don't eat dogs, but they are source material for food. You can integrate them in. The understanding that it is a moral difference between the two is what I am talking about, right? Your main problem with what you eat is a cultural one. It is the way you were brought up. And if you don't question that, you'll never understand that. I'm not telling you that you should go out and try horse, although it is nice. I've had it. I ate it in France. It really is a good meat. There are other meats that I've tried around the world, and some people would say, ooh, right? Just here in Louisiana, like we eat all kinds of wild stuff down here. We eat crawfish. Everywhere else in the country, they're like, that's just an insect, right? A crustacean. Or we eat alligator. A lot of people don't get along with that. We eat snakes, raccoons. We eat things that most people don't down here. But we have better food than people, so it works out in the balance. It is cultural separation that makes that happen. The ability to think constructively, to understand correctly the underlying principles of why you think what you think, is what allows you to differentiate yourself from the fourth dimensional beings that are sleeping on this bed behind me. And that is through practice, right? That is through learning to focus your mind upon the correct questions and to search out source material, to spend your free time to get more information. That is the part that most people have a problem with, right? It is easy to take whatever is spouted to you and just run with it. It is much more difficult to take what is spouted at you and then fact check it. But you should be fact checking everything. Even the stuff that I say. I tell you all the time, don't take what I say as at face value. Investigate what I tell you. See if it resonates. See if it's true. Go back to the source material. Read it for yourself. I tell you that all of the time. I believe that my path is correct. I believe that I am on the right track. I am seeing the manifestations of that in my life. But there may be another path for you. And so you should investigate. Understand the underlying principles. The trained mind knows that every transaction must benefit every person who is in any way connected with the transaction. And any attempt to profit by weakness, ignorance, or necessity of another will inevitably operate to his disadvantage. That is true. That is one of the laws of return, right? One of the 8 laws of creation, the law of return in specificity. That which you put out is what will be returned to you. And so if you are trying to profit by someone's weakness, then someone else will take from your weakness. If you are taking from their ignorance, somebody else will take from your ignorance. Or necessity, right? It is the same. It is mechanical. Karma is mechanics. It is underlying physics. I have the 8 laws by which those physics manifest. This is because the individual is a part of the universal. It is part of the divine. As a matter of fact, it is a tiny individualized piece of the divine. He's calling it universal. The universal and divine are the same thing. A part cannot antagonize any other part, but, on the contrary, the welfare of each part depends upon a recognition of the interest of the whole. A part can antagonize another part. That is literally what happens if you do not grease a bearing, right? But that is not the intent. That is not what is supposed to happen. You should be properly aligned. Proper alignment is taking into consideration the wants and needs of others. It is not just you. It is not just about you. There are others involved, and you should be cognizant of that in every step you take. Those who recognize this principle have a great advantage in the affairs of life. They do not wear themselves out. They can eliminate vagrant thoughts with facility. They can readily concentrate to the highest degree possible on any subject. They do not waste time or money upon objects which can be of no possible benefit to them. If you cannot do these things, it is because you have, thus far, not made the necessary effort. Now is the time to make the effort. The result will be exactly in proportion to the effort expended. That is another one that is not quite true. There is, again, in the 8 laws of creation, the law of returns. And the law of returns states that for every force put out, there will be a return in according to a formula, right? So your efforts will be magnified according to your intentions up to the point of null returns, at which point it will be diminished by those same intentions accordingly. And it's the square cube law. For every growth of size, there is a tripling of volume. It is one of the fundamentals. And so, again, I take some exception to it. It is not like every action does not have an equal and opposite reaction. It has an appropriate reaction, and that may not be equal and opposite. It is a slight turning. It is a hairbreadth difference, but that hair's breadth makes all the difference in the world in the motivations and in the mechanics by which karma functions. The result will not be in proportion to the effort expended. It will be according to the law of returns. One of the strongest affirmations which you can use for the purpose of strengthening the will and realizing your power to accomplish is, I can be what I will to be. Every time you repeat it, realize who and what the I is. Try to come to a thorough understanding of the true nature of the I. If you do, you will become invincible. That is, provided that your objects and purposes are constructive and therefore in harmony with the creative principle of the universe. And again, I refer you to the 8 laws of creation. If you make use of this affirmation, use it continuously, night and morning, and as often during the day as you think of it. Continue to do so until it becomes a part of you. Form the habit. That is, focus on that which you want to return and not that which you don't, right? The I am what I will to be is taking control of the intentionality of your journey. We talk all of the time about that which you focus on is what you will attract in your life. That is one of the 8 laws of creation, the law of attraction in specificity. And so by training yourself to think with that particular phrase, what you are doing is aligning yourself with what you actually want, as opposed to what you do not. So this is a practical application of that law, not a substitution for it. Unless you do this, you had better not start at all, because modern psychology tells us that when we start something and do not complete it, or make a resolution and do not keep it, we are forming the habit of failure, absolute ignominious failure. If you do not intend to do a thing, do not start. If you do start, see it through, even if the heavens fall. If you make up your mind to do something, do it. Let nothing, no one interfere. The I in you has determined. The thing is settled, the die is cast. There is no longer any argument. And that is true, mostly. But there are times when you will fail. You have to understand that. Do not start trying to manifest at all without the full expectation that while it can be fulfilled, it almost certainly will be fulfilled. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes that is part of your karmic contracts, and sometimes it is just the mechanics of what actually is, how the bottlenecks have to unfold. And so you always have to hold it in your mind that it's not possible. When I'm manifesting healing, I'm healing myself. It is literally happening. And I still hold it in my mind that it might not if it's outside of the will of the plan, of what God has intended. That is another important change. It is something that I disagree with heartily, right? The holding back that the bad can happen allows you to make accommodation when the bad does happen. If you are fully convinced that I'm going to achieve this goal, right? I'm going to tear down this wall with my bare hands. You may not. You may break your hand, you may break your arm, you may kill yourself, you may do a myriad of things that interferes with you fulfilling that goal. That doesn't mean that you were wrong to try the goal. It just means that that was not part of the plan. That wall is meant to be there. Hold the possibility, right? Not the expectation, but the possibility that failure is there. And then you can accommodate failure when it comes. You can change the plan. You can make new set goals. That doesn't mean that you failed necessarily. It means that something has to change. And that's another one that'll bite you in the ass. If you hold on to that, you're going to get... That's why this shit don't work for people. If you carry out this idea, beginning with small things which you know you can control, and gradually increase the effort, but never under any circumstances allowing your I to be overruled, you will find that you can eventually control yourself, and many men and women have found to their sorrow that it is easier to control a kingdom than it is to control themselves. But when you have learned to control yourself, you will have found the world within, which controls the world without. You will have become irresistible. Men and things will respond to your every wish without any apparent effort on your part. And again, that is not going to happen. Your spouse is occasionally not going to be in the mood. Occasionally, your children are going to be disrespectful or rebellious. Sometimes your boss is going to say no. Sometimes the world is not going to work out the way that you want. I understand the power of positive thinking, right? I emphasize that. Focus on what you want. But you have to understand that what you don't want is still there, right? This is not so strange or as impossible as it may appear when you remember that the world within is controlled by the I, and that this I is a part or one with the infinite I, which is the universal energy or spirit, usually called God. Your mind can make decisions that God does not agree with. This is not a mere statement or a theory made for the purpose of confirming or establishing an idea, but it is a fact which has been accepted by the best religious thought as well as the best scientific thought. Sources, please. Herbert Spencer says, amid all the mysteries by which we are surrounded, nothing is more certain than that we are ever in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy from which all things proceed. That is not agreeing with your previous statement. That is stating a fact, right? Everything does come from God. That is true. The infinite and eternal energy is God. That is the Holy Spirit. Lyman Abbott, in an address delivered before the alumni of Bangor Theological Seminary, said, "We come in to think of God as dwelling in man rather than operating on man from without." And again, that is not in defense of your previous statement, and it is stating a fact, right? Now, I hold slight contention with that because to me, God is the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is both within and without. It is both you and me. He is me, he is you, he is the space between me and you, and the space between me and you. So God is all things, and all things are in accordance with God's will, not necessarily yours. Like, you do get some direction, right? You do get things, you get to ask for things, you get to manifest things. That is real. But you do not have unlimited control. If you think that you do, you will hurt yourself. You will injure yourself manifesting in the wrong way. This is a guidebook to doing it the wrong way. 100%. Wonder how many times he got married. Science goes a little way into its search and stops. Science finds the ever-present eternal energy, but religion finds the power behind this energy and locates it within man. But this is by no means a new discovery. The Bible says exactly the same thing, and the language is just as plain and convincing. Know ye not that ye are the temple of the living God? Here, then, is the secret of the wonderful creative power of the world within. This is the temple right here. You navigate it in 5D space. Here is the secret of power, of mastery. To overcome does not mean to go without things. Self-denial is not success. We cannot give unless we get. We cannot be helpful unless we are strong. The infinite is not a bankrupt, and we, who are the representatives of infinite power, should not be bankrupts either. And if we wish to be of service to others, we must have power and more power. But to get it, we must give it. We must be of service. Self-denial is in part success, but it is not the definition of success, right? We talk all of the time. There are 7 virtues and 7 vices, and you are meant to live in the balance thereof. Part of that is self-denial. We'll use lust and chastity in this particular example. You desire to have sex with as many people as you can. That is a biological imperative for most people, especially men, but even women. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to, right? Or even that you should. You should find the one person who you are meant to spend your time with and invest yourself in them to a point where you have a mutually beneficial relationship with this other representative of God. You are not meant to just go around throwing yourself to everyone, and you're not meant to be a monk living on a hill somewheres with no sexual contact. Neither one of those things are what you are meant to do. You are meant to find the balance, to have this one. Most people have this one, and not all of these. Now, some people are rigged for polygamy. That is exceedingly rare, and I have discussed it in other places, but some people are built that way. But in that case, you are meant to be with those two people, or possibly three, but getting past that, it is really stretching the bounds of credulity. That has to be like a completely open, honest, loving relationship for all parties involved, and that is exceedingly difficult to do for two people, much less three. So you are meant to strike a balance. You're not meant to go without things, and you're not meant to accumulate things to the point of excess. The more we give, the more we shall get. We must become a channel whereby the universal can express activity. The universal is constantly seeking to express itself, to be of service, and it seeks the channel whereby it can find the greatest activity, where it can do the most good, where it can be of the greatest service to mankind. The cup which you use is the cup which will be used. The measure, shaken and leveled, right? That is this: the more we give, the more we shall get. It is the foundation of the tithes. It is giving to charity. It is expending your energy for someone who cannot return it. It is one of the laws of creation. So yes, the more you give, the more you shall get, but that shall not be your intention for giving. If that is your intention from giving, you will receive bitter back. It is a guarantee. If your giving is based upon receiving in return, all you're going to get back is bitterness. It will be exponents, right? The law of return says that it will be magnified by your intentions. And if your intentions are selfish, you will receive selfish in return. The universe is constantly seeking to express itself, yes, to be of service, mostly, and it seeks the channel where it can find the greatest activity. That's debatable. Where it can be of the greatest service to mankind is probably its intention, but it is fully invested in every vessel at the same time, right? God loves me just as much as he loves you. He wants me to succeed, but he wants you to succeed just as much. And so it is an equal distribution. It is the acceptance that is the difference. Your dedication allows things to happen for you in a greater amount. So being aligned with the 8 laws of creation makes a big difference. But when you are expending yourself in the service to others wholesomely, it will be returned to you wholesomely. The universal cannot express through you as long as you are busy with your plans, your own purposes. Quiet the senses, seek inspiration, focus the mental activity on the within, dwell in the consciousness of your unity with omnipotence. Still water runs deep. Contemplate the multitudinous opportunities to which you have spiritual access by the omnipresence of power. Yes, meditate. Right, that's what this is. Prayer, fasting, meditation. This is the meditation part. Quiet the senses, seek inspiration, focus on the mental activity within. That is meditation. We discussed that in the last video. If you are unfamiliar, you should fall back and check out part 3. Visualize the events, circumstances, and conditions which these spiritual connections may assist in manifesting. Realize the fact that the essence and soul of all things is spiritual, and that the spiritual is the real, because it is the life of all there is. When the spirit is gone, the life is gone. It is dead. It has ceased to exist. Yeah. Visualize the events, circumstances, and conditions. Visualization is not a necessity. I know somebody's like, wait, what? You just showed up. I have had aphantasia. I don't have the ability to manifest anything or to visualize anything, and yet I manifest. It is not about forming a mental image. It is about the intentionality of the forming of the image. So that is a handy tool. I'm not discounting that, but it is not a required one. It is something that you can use to emphasize and to bring about faster, maybe, but it is not something that has to be there. Realize the fact that the essence and soul of all things is spiritual. That is true. And that the spiritual is the real. That is true. Because it is the life of all there is. When the spirit is gone, the life is gone. That is true. These mental activities pertain to the world within, to the world of cause. And conditions and circumstances which result are the effect. It is thus that you become a creator. This is important work, and the higher, loftier, grander, and more noble ideals which you can conceive, the more important the work will become. And again, that goes back to the 8 laws of creation. But yes, your mental activities do pertain to the world within. Your primary manifestations, at least in the beginning, should be internal. Overwork or overplay or over-bodily activity of any kind produces conditions of mental apathy and stagnation, which makes it impossible to do the more important work, which results in a realization of conscious power. We should, therefore, seek the silence frequently. Power comes through repose. It is in the silence that we can be still, and when we are still, we can think. And thought is the secret to all attainment. Prayer, fasting, meditation, once again, right? Now, recreation plays an enormous part in this. This is one that I struggle with because I am work-driven. I spend most of my time in productive activity of one type, even when I am doing recreational activities. And so, you should be seeking recreation, not to the point of excess, but to the point of enjoyment of life. You are here to enjoy life. Yes, work is part of it. Toil is part of it. Grief is part of it. Sorrow is part of it. Joy is part of it. Happiness is part of it. Enjoyment is part of it. You should be seeking to do things that are productive. But you should also be seeking to do things that are simply fun. Also, pray, fast, and meditate, because power does come through repose, and in the silence we can be still. So, thought is a mode of motion and is carried by the law of vibration, the same as light or electricity. It is given vitality by the emotions through the law of love. It takes form and expression by the law of growth. It is a product of the spiritual I, hence its divine, spiritual, and creative nature. Okay, so the law of vibration, all things are moving. That is one of the laws. That is the law of movement. The law of love, that's not really one of them. I understand that it probably should be, but it's not, right? You can look for it in some of the others, right? I would have to have the whole list to try and pick apart where it would fit within the existing laws of creation. But that love is subjective, right? What I consider love and what someone else considers love is not necessarily the same thing in the way that motion is, right? Motion is present whether you believe in it or not, whether you feel it or not. Love is not necessarily the same way. And so the law of love, I think that's just an extrapolation. I could be wrong, but it doesn't really fit. And the law of growth, that is part of the laws, but it is contained within the other laws. It is not its own law, right? That is part of the law of returns, right? But what you invest is returned to you by your intentions, right? Magnified by your intentions. So that is the growth in that. From this, It is evident that in order to express power, abundance, or any other constructive purpose, the emotions must be called upon to give feeling to the thought so that it will take form. How may this purpose be accomplished? This is the vital point. How may we develop the faith, the courage, the feeling, which will result in accomplishment? Yeah. Emotions play a vital part, but I'm not entirely sure about the terminology here being exactly right. It is evident that in order to express power, abundance, or any other constructive purpose, the emotions must be called upon to give feeling to the thought. It's not necessarily true. You can give power to thought outside of emotion. People do that all of the time. I'm not going to try to dig into specific examples because that is diving deep into philosophy. But I disagree, even if I can't articulate it particularly well right at this moment. Like, investing your emotions is important, right? If you are invested correctly with your emotions, it does kind of make a difference. But it plays more into the motivation than it does into the actual physical make it happen, right? The make it happen part is kind of an independent of you part. It plays more with the returns than anything. The reply is by exercise. Mental strength is secured in exactly the same way that physical strength is secured by exercise. That is true. We think something, perhaps with difficulty the first time. We think the same thing again, and it becomes easier this time. We think it again and again. It then becomes a mental habit. We continue to think the same thing. Finally, it becomes automatic. We can no longer help thinking the thing. We are now positive of what we think. There is no longer any doubt about it. We are sure. We know. And yes, that is part of creating the reality. Bear in mind that the no may be the answer, and no amount of you exerting force is going to change the divine no. It's just not going to happen. But through mental discipline, you can strengthen yourself to resist temptation. That is this. You can train yourself to pay your bills on time. That is this. You can train yourself to investigate fully the thoughts that you are having. That is this. It is discipline of a mental nature, focusing yourself. And it does become automatic, right? The things that I talk about here are automatic for me. When I feel the response, like in the last example, I know it's not correct. I can't even articulate why, but I just kind of know it. It is a reflex muscle image, right? I feel it in my heart that is not quite correct, even if I can't express it. That is it becoming automatic. That is it becoming muscle memory, in the same way that playing an instrument is, the same way that driving a nail is, the same way of doing physical activity repeatedly. It is training your brain. In part 3, I asked you to relax, to let go physically. Now I'm going to ask you to let go mentally. If you practice the previous exercise 15 or 20 minutes a day in accordance with the instructions, you can, no doubt, relax physically. And anyone who cannot consciously do this quickly and completely is not a master of himself. He has not obtained freedom. He is still a slave to conditions. But I shall assume that you have mastered the exercise and are ready to take the next step, which is mental freedom. And this is true right here. If you practice 15 to 20 minutes a day, it can become a reflex action. I can, at will, trigger the chemicals in my mind that allow me to see outside of myself. And by that, I don't mean the normal stuff, the subtle field, right? I can see that. It is not something that happens naturally. Like if I walk up to you and I'm not intentional, it's not there. But I can, at will, trigger that. I can make it happen where reality kind of shifts a little bit. I can see things, undercurrents of existence. It's a little bit hard to describe. It's hard to replicate externally. But it is something that I can do. And it is something that I can do at will because of the practice that I have done. When I first started doing it, it was not natural. But it is natural now to me, like as natural as breathing. If I decide I want to do it, I can do it. I do it walking every single morning. Now, after taking your usual position, remove all tension by completely relaxing. Then mentally let go of all adverse conditions such as hatred, anger, worry, jealousy, envy, sorry, trouble, or disappointment of any kind. Also, let go of any happiness, joy, elation, or any emotion whatsoever as part of this, right? Not just the bad ones, the good ones as well. You may say that you cannot let go of these things, but you can. You can do so by mentally determining to do so, by voluntary intention and persistence. And again, that is something that you have to acquire. You will not believe it when you begin, but it is something that you can do. I assume because I have, and he's saying it, so I'm assuming anybody else can too. The reason that some cannot do this is because they allow themselves to be controlled by the emotions instead of by their intellect. But the will, guided by the intellect, will gain you the victory. You will not succeed the first time you try, but practice makes perfect, in this as in everything else. And you must succeed in dismissing, eliminating, and completely destroying these negative and destructive thoughts, because they are the seed which is constantly germinating into discordant conditions of every conceivable kind and description. All right, we are to the questions. What is thought? Thought is spiritual energy. How is it carried? By the law of vibration. How is it given vitality? By the law of love. How does it take form? By the law of growth. What is the secret of its creative power? It is a spiritual activity. How may we develop the faith, courage, and enthusiasm which will result in accomplishment? By recognition of our spiritual nature. What is the secret of power? Service. Why is this so? Because we get what we give. What is silence? A physical stillness. And what is the value of it? It is the first step to self-control, self-mastery. There is nothing truer than that the quality of thought which we entertain correlates certain externals in the outside world. This is the law from which there is no escape, and it is this law, this correlative of the thought with its object, that from time immemorial has led the people to believe in special providence. Wellman's. The quality of thought which we entertain, right, that is focus on what you want and not what you don't. That is the quality of thought, defined quite briefly. And that is going to bring us to the end of our exploration of Part 4. We'll be back with Part 5 in the next video. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add here, right? Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics, and I understand that I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay my unconventional beliefs. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it because it is something that I know. It is a reflex. It is intrinsic to me by this point. I have been practicing it long enough that I can do it without thinking. And so when I identify something, it is like, it screams at me. It's like, whoa, that doesn't fit the pattern. There are things that are true, right? The 8 laws of creation is a good summary of those things. Most of what he is talking about here fits inside of those 8 laws of creation. I point those out all the time. Hardly anybody watches them, and that's fine, right? I'm here to tell you things, not convince you of it. That is the fundamental way in which karma works. It is how manifestation happens. It is what makes the result be the result. And if you can align yourself correctly with those things, then the manifestation that you receive will be the correct one. That is something that I have used. It is something that I know because I have used it. Now, it can be entirely subjective. What works for me may not work for you. I don't know. I can't tell you for sure that what I have done, you will be able to do. I assume it. I assume that anything I can do, you can do better. But that doesn't mean it's true. There may be somebody out there that can't do any of this. It may just be me because of all my unique peccadillos. Regardless, I assume that you can. But it takes practice. It takes discipline. You have to put in the work. That's one of the laws. If you don't put in the work, you don't get a return. There will still be returns. You just don't get to choose them. And so, investing yourself with the correct motivations and the correct intentionality is vitally important to receiving the correct returns. Now, I didn't do a deep dive into his history, right? I don't know how many businesses he opened. I know that Napoleon Hill, who built his system upon this system, was not all that great. And by that, I don't mean that he wasn't successful, because he had various successes throughout his life, but he had a whole lot of failures, including several marriages. He had several businesses that went defunct. He joined several societies who disappeared. His intentionality was probably not exactly where it needed to be. We're going to do a study on Napoleon Hill just the same as we're doing here. I don't know Mr. Haanel. I haven't done the deep work necessary to understand his motivations and the results thereof. He may have wound up a multi-billionaire. I don't know. It is highly unlikely, right? He probably did manifest money. That's one of those things that you can do, right? You can make contracts and make it happen, or you can invest in the way by which the money will show up, but it normally will have a negative effect when it shows up if you are not intentionally aligned. I'm not entirely sure that Mr. Haanel's alignment was correct in the way that would bring forth fruitful returns without the unfortunate consequences. And again, I don't know, so don't hold me to that, but some of the things in here I expressly disagree with, and I feel like I have covered that well enough, but most of it will get you there regardless. That is why some people get some effects by following this. I just feel like you're not getting the correct effects, or even the maximum effects, because the alignment is not correct. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if there is something along these lines that you would like to see me talk about, leave that in the comments as well. I am making a list. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks, because I do not say what money is coming, right? That is part of the abundance, and people will freely give at some point for the information that I freely give. That is what the intention behind this is, right? I am here to dispense information freely, fully, and as clear as I possibly can. The returns that come from that will be determined by source, not by me. You may play a small part in that, but you don't have to. This is still free. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.